Is Patagonia beer or apparel? Which one is it? I'm Andrei Mincov, the founder of Trademark Factory, and in this video I'm going to share my thoughts about yet another trademarking screw-up. This time around, it's Patagonia, the clothing company, going after Anheuser-Busch, who released their new type of beer and called it Patagonia. Let me start by reading from the article, and you can always find the link in the description below. AB, or Anheuser-Busch, InBev, jealous protectors of trademark, pretty blatantly committing trademark infringement. Or are they? Let's see. Even if you haven't read through our previous stories about giant beer brewer AB InBev being very much into protecting its intellectual property to the extreme, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with, you probably would have guessed that to be the case as a matter of instinct. With a large legal war chest and an equally large legal team, the company has had no problem with gobbling up questionable trademarks and then wielding them as a weapon against even the smallest of non-competitors. With such a strict view on its own IP rights and such an expansive view on trademark law, you would think that InBev would be super into making sure its own actions fell well within the bounds of trademark law. That kind of makes sense. You'd be wrong, they say. Patagonia, the rather well-known clothier, has sued InBev over how it's used a trademark it received in 2012 for Patagonia. Just to be clear, it was Anheuser-Busch that received the Patagonia trademark in 2012. Well, you're sure to be wondering how there could be customer confusion, as the apparel and beer markets are quite different. The details in this case definitely matter. We can start with what InBev did in the early days of holding the trademark, which amounts to essentially not a thing. AB InBev was granted a trademark to sell Patagonia beer in the United States in 2012, but the company sat on the name until 2018 when it started selling beer with the branding. Patagonia says their brand was created in the 1960s and is registered in 90 countries. So one party has been using its trademark for decades, while the other spent half a decade sitting on theirs. The rest of the details matter as well. For starters, Patagonia released its own brew called Long Root in 2016. InBev has also finally started using the Patagonia branding in part to tout a reputation for environmental work that InBev is now getting into. Patagonia, the company, has long been heavily involved in environmental initiatives as well. On top of that, InBev suddenly began setting up pop-up stores on ski hills and in ski villages, which is a prime marketplace for Patagonia. As part of those stores, InBev began selling Patagonia apparel, its rival company's market for its own trademark. And keeping all of those details in mind, there's a logo InBev chose to use. So here's the logo for Patagonia, the company. Here's the logo for Patagonia, the beer. Are they identical? No. Is there some resemblance? Probably. So let's keep going. Now, are those logos super duper similar? Absolutely not, just what I said. And on the other hand, given all of the details and shady actions mentioned above by InBev, it's not outlandish for Patagonia to suggest that the logos are close enough to be confusing when all other factors are taken into account. Once again, as seems to always be the case, we find a huge proponent of intellectual property, one that has been happy to use lawyers to bully others, is likely committing trademark infringement itself. It's enough to make one wonder if there are any true champions of IP among large companies, or only cynics willing to use it when it suits themselves. So here are my 2 cents about this. Well, first of all, this website, TechDirt, is known for writing articles that bash brand owners for daring to enforce their intellectual property. You know, this article is nothing different, but it actually makes some good points, except, and it's not really their fault, it's what Patagonia, the company, did with their notice of claim. It's this weird focus on Anheuser-Busch sitting on their trademark registration for 6 years. Logically, this really doesn't make any sense, because if it is an infringement for Anheuser-Busch to sell their beer under Patagonia brand the way they do today, would things be any different if they started doing it in 2012? No, right? There's absolutely no difference that they started doing it in 2018 versus 2012. So the only reason they're bringing it up is to paint AB in a dark, nasty picture, right? They're trying to create this perception that somehow AB is a monster that did something wrong by sitting on their trademark. Again, nothing wrong with that. They had some small sales, which you can see if you go through the application process on USPTO's website. There is a specimen that shows a bottle. It doesn't look like it's massive quantities of those bottles were sold, but they had some sales apparently, otherwise they wouldn't be claiming them. And then when it came time for them to renew their trademark, actually not renew, but to show that they're still using the trademark between the 5th and 6th anniversary, which is something you need to do in the US of trademark registration, they had to file a new specimen, and they filed a specimen showing all those cases in big fridges. So this is why it's 2018, because their 6-month mark was about to run out, so they had to put something out there. But again, just the whole idea of giving such a huge focus to, wow, they were sitting on the trademark. Well, so what? So what? Would this be any less of an infringement if they launched it 2 years after, 1 year after, 1 day after? It doesn't matter at all. And all it does, it kind of shows that Patagonia's lawyers are being a little desperate for coming up with arguments to support their idea that there's a trademark infringement there. Because the problem is what they're facing is that AB now has a trademark that's incontestable. They have a trademark that Patagonia never opposed when it had an opportunity to. They have a trademark that they didn't challenge before AB claiming contestability. So now they're pretty much grasping at straws. They're trying to figure out a way to convince the courts that AB is doing something wrong. And really, the one thing I think that AB is doing wrong in this case is that they're setting up those pop-up shops where they sell both Patagonia Beer and Patagonia apparel. If that's true, that's probably their biggest mistake, because instead of having an argument that no, we're totally separate, nobody would ever confuse beer with apparel, they're putting both in the same store. They're pretty much aligning the channels of trade, and they're saying, look, if you're buying clothes, you should be buying our beer. Or if you're buying our beer, you should be liking those clothes. And by doing that, AB is shooting themselves in the foot and giving really good piece of ammunition to Patagonia, the clothing company. We're going to see where this goes. Both players obviously have sufficient budget to take this all the way, whether they're going to settle or they're going to have to fight it all the way through, we'll find out, and you'll know about this in this channel. So if you found this video useful, make sure you subscribe now and get notified whenever the next video goes live, and we post these videos every single day. And if you got a brand that you want to protect, whether you are a clothing company, a beer company, or none of those, all that matters is that you have a brand that you value and that you want to protect. Go to trademarkfactory.com, book a free call with our strategy advisors, and tell them your story. Tell them why you think you want to protect your brand. Tell them what you want to build with your business, what role will the brand play, and all of these things, and we'll see if you're a good fit to be working with us. So like I said, trademarkfactory.com, book a call, we'll take it from there. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.